Welcome back to more Warhammer lore. In today's episode we'll be covering the mighty Saurus Oldblood, Kroq-Gar. He's one of the oldest living characters in Warhammer, and one of great importance for the Lizardmen from both a military and leadership perspective. He is a beacon of hope and an inspiration to his fellow Saurus, and is said to be able to command the forces of the Lizardmen like no other general in their ancient history. Unfortunately, there is just not enough lore on this figure, so this will be a rather short video compared to some of the other lore videos we have covered. But hopefully you will learn something and perhaps understand some of what drives this near mystical character to action. Kroq-Gar, the last defender of Ixtwatl, is an ancient Saurus Oldblood, last of the Saurus warriors from the ruined temple city of Ixtwatl. The spawning that brought Kroq-Gar into the world produced a handful of other Saurus, each marked for greatness. With instinctive battle cunning, these warriors were unsurpassed by any of their kind, and each possessed an innate dominion over their native beasts of the jungle. Kroq-Gar's spawning coincided with the rearing of a brood of mighty carnosaurs, and he claimed the largest and most ferocious as his own, which is Grimlock. And if you remember back to my previous Lizardmen lore videos, you will realize that I did speak of usually when a spawning only has a few Saurus come out of it instead of like an entire regiment like they normally would, that is actually what marks them for greatness as far as the Lizardmen are concerned, because then you know that this is a special leader of some sort, or maybe a hero, and is being sent by the Old Ones to support the Lizardmen in their great time of need. Kroq-Gar has served as Temple City for only a few centuries when the Great Catastrophe occurred. Although Kroq-Gar and his spawned kin fought many epic battles and destroyed entire armies of demons, the never-ending onslaught eventually caused the defenders to take refuge within the temple city of Ixtwatl. There, the magical barriers of the mage priests saved them for a time, but eventually collapsed. Taking advantage of a surge of uncontrolled energy, demons manifested themselves inside the temple city, butchering the Slann before Kroq-Gar could ride to their aid, so the full power of chaos swarmed over Ixtwatl. Although his temple city was in ruins, Kroq-Gar and the surviving army fought their way out, driven by their own rage and the last blessings of their mage priests. En route to their freedom, they sent many demons back to the abyss. For centuries thereafter, Kroq-Gar carried on a running battle in the jungle, the last army of Ixtwatl dwindling around him. By the time the elves enacted their great ritual, only Kroq-Gar and his ageless carnosaur Grimlock remained. It was the great lord Mazdamundi, High Slann Mage Priest of Ixtwatl, that summoned Kroq-Gar to his temple city, choosing him to lead the great Saurus armies that remained. Mazdamundi gifted Kroq-Gar with the ancient artifact known as the Hand of the Gods, with which he could sear the flesh from his enemies' bones. Since that day, Mazdamundi has assigned Kroq-Gar the sacred task of exterminating those creatures not part of the Old One's great plan. Over his long existence, Kroq-Gar has fought many wars, leading the armies of Ixtwatl or joining other hosts to aid them in battle. There is no continent upon which Kroq-Gar and Grimlock have not fought. For the last defender of Ixtwatl, the battle is not yet over. And that's about all she wrote as far as his background goes. Now, I will get into his gear, since we've got plenty of time here. And the first set of his gear is the Hand of the Gods, which we mentioned earlier with Mazdamundi. And with it, Kroq-Gar can create a searing ball of light in the palm of his hand, which can then be directed at his enemies. Essentially, this is Shin's Burning Gaze from the lore of Light. And it's a pretty good spell, and it's a bound ability essentially. So he's not missing his arm. That's kind of like an Old One relic of sort that he can use. And he also has the revered Spear of Talaxala. This weapon was said to have been wielded by the warlike Old One deity Talaxala as he rode his sky chariot into battle. It hums with ancient energy, and those struck by it are overcome by doom-laden visions that sap their will to fight. And essentially this is literally a relic of one of the Old Ones. It is something that the Slann witnessed one of these Old Ones using in battle, and it is a ridiculous honor for them to allow anybody to wield it, let alone Kroq-Gar, him being so special. This just kind of goes to show you how special he is in his society. And as you can see, Kroq-Gar is almost a spiritual figure for his people, almost as much as a Slann, especially since Mazdamundi allowed him to wield such powerful relics of the enigmatic masters, the Old Ones. Indeed, facing Kroq-Gar in battle is a prospect many would fear if they knew who and more importantly, what he is and represents. Unfortunately, Kroq-Gar has little notoriety outside of the Lizardmen, with the exception of more than likely the ruinous powers, and I'm almost certain he is mostly feared by the Skaven, as from what I've been led to understand during the uprising of Clan Pestilence and the serpent god Sotek, it is said that he himself, a mighty old blood in his own right, personally beheaded hundreds of Skaven war chiefs leading up to the birth of the serpent god. I will say that is kind of suspect, as I want to say that is a little bit older lore. It's not in the newer lore book, but I was reaching. So take that little bit with a grain of salt, but in my mind it doesn't really bother the fluff that much, and so it just makes more sense for it to actually have happened. So unfortunately that is literally all the lore I could find on Kroq-Gar. He suffers much in the way of the Lizardmen as a whole, and is supposed to be shrouded in mystery, and therefore concrete lore is hard to come by. Now, as far as Total War is concerned, I could not be much more happier with the way they implemented Kroq-Gar. They have him leading the Last Defender faction, which, hopefully after hearing this lore, you know why they chose that name, as he's literally one of the few living Saurus from the Great Cataclysm that is still alive to this day. It is slightly unfortunate that he does not start in Ixtwatl, but I understand why, as then there would be no one to really lead the Lizardmen of the Southlands. As we also heard, Kroq-Gar is one of the few Old Bloods to have actually waged war on every continent and in the Warhammer world in general, which makes his starting location rather flexible. I also am a fan of how they made it extremely easy for him to have an entire army of Saurus by making them cheaper, as it is close as I think they could get to showing how inspirational he is to his own kind, especially that being Saurus, and what sets him apart from his other generals of the Lizardmen. Now, he does have all of his legendary gear, which we talked about earlier, and his mount and longest living companion, Grimlock, faithfully allows him to ride him into battle. And I honestly feel like Grimlock doesn't get as much credit as he is due. I mean, he's just as much a combat monstrosity as Kroq-Gar is. Now, I wish there was more for me to talk about, honestly, but that is literally all I've got for today, guys. I would like to say thank you to all of you watching this content for supporting me and the channel. It really does mean a lot, and if you are new to the channel, make sure to like the video and subscribe for any future content I have coming out. It really does help out. It'll help us grow, and it'll just help you keep up with what we've got going on. So I have plenty of lore to cover, and don't be afraid to ask questions down in the comment section. I try my best to answer the questions I can, and I will be compiling said questions and many other if my recent Q&A video series. So if you haven't seen the past Q&A, I will have it linked in the description, and it's more of a way for you to connect with me and for me to interact with you on a more personal level. So don't be afraid to comment and correct me on issues if I miss something. I can't know everything, and I do in fact make mistakes from time to time. So finally, with all of that out of the way, I do have another lore video coming up relatively soon, since this one was so short compared to the others, and I am working on that right now, so just bide your time, it is coming. And with that, I have been Jumbo Thick. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a good day.